Hi all, this is my classic game round 3 against Turjay Lee. I don't think he's got a FIDE rating, and he was like given us about sort of 1700, but actually in the next round he beat a 170 ECF, so I think he's quite dangerous, and he's definitely a very careful player, using up a lot of his time, finding a lot of resources it seemed. So anyway, I played my King's Inch in the fence, so I've scored quite well in this, in long time controls. And I've played it for years, so I'm sort of comfortable with it. And the Simish, I particularly like playing this an early c5, so bishop e3 c5, sort of gambit line, which although John Nunn once lost to Kramnik in, it's sometimes, I think it's quite an interesting weapon of choice. It derails White's standard sort of stereotypical plan, like Queen d2, Castle Queenside, h4, h5, that sort of hack attack. It gets a bit derailed. Anyway, he avoided going into the gambit line. He played knight g2, so I just added a bit more pressure, offering it again, and again he rejected the gambit. And now here I was considering either b6 initially, but later knight d7. I thought, well, maybe I want my queen to come to a5, but I think that b6 might be a good move as well. So, but I played knight d7. He plays bishop h6, and here it's a bit of a blunder actually. And the same thing happens in Gibraltar early in the year, that it seems White players are underestimating Black playing bishop takes h6 followed by taking on d4, because this just wins a pawn. It gives me the advantage straight away now. So I just play knight takes d4. He castles queenside, and I just play e5. So that's a bit of a problem with the Simish generally, that this bishop h6 is slightly loosening d4 control. So I just pounced on that to gain a small advantage, and I was quite comfortable now. So after he's reinforcing d5, I take. Now this knight might hop to e4, so I play f5, which also means queen f6, and I'm not blocking in my own f pawn. So I'm already okay, and I'm not too worried by this attack, because I can always play g5 with h5, locking in the queen, as long as d6 is not going to drop off to knight b5 or something. So I played a6 to actually stop things like knight b5, but also maybe later b5 or rook a7 to g7. All these sort of resources seems to favour me, h5, g5. So you can't really attack with just the queen and with his bishop stuck on f1 and this sort of big knight on d4. So I thought I was positionally like much better here, and instead of routinely capturing his queen, I didn't want any rook h6s, so I played h5 first. After knight takes, queens came off, and now I just wanted to dislocate these pawns, so I played for b5 next. So rook c8 and now b5. I didn't want to ever have to face c5 with a swamping of pawns, so I sort of fragmented his pawn structure, and then I noticed, and Rybka really likes this as well, that actually his king on the b file is a liability for the b4 pawn. So I started going for his b4 pawn now. So rook b8, and I'm winning another pawn because his king's in trouble here. If king b3, then I take bishop a4. I'll show you that. So let's say king b3. I just take bishop a4. It's actually a mate in 6, believe it or not. If king b2, then check. Say here, and look, his king's just getting murdered by these two rooks. So this is real trouble. And there's also another line. Say he goes here, then bishop d1 check. So the bishop's not going to be attacked by the king. The king has to go back, and here it's like a mate in 2. So he's in real trouble again for the b pawn. So he's losing another pawn. But I thought he spent ages and ages and ages over this next move, maybe half an hour. He played bishop a2, and I thought it was clever, but actually it's not that brilliant. I could have just taken that pawn and taken that pawn. The point being is, I was a bit concerned about him, doubling on the 7th rank, but there's really no time, because if I snap up these pawns, then bishop a4 and d3 and d2, there's no time with his king on a1. So that's what I should have done. So I prolonged the game a bit with this king maneuver, just to make sure he couldn't, you know, double. But this is winning as well, and he just sacks the exchange. But I just simplify further with Rook A2 just to make sure there's no counterplay, and I just play F4 here now. So I've got these pawns just coming down like Space Invaders, and I don't mind the checks that they're going to run out. I try and make sure the king can't go beyond, you know, to try and get a perpetual in an embarrassing way by shutting the king out with Rook D4, and also still the gravitational effect of these pawns is evident now. So D2, E4, they're coming down, and he plays on for surprisingly a few more moves than I expected, actually, as though maybe he was looking for a stalemate or something. So he threw in a couple of checks, then resigned. Let's have a look in the overview and summary. So it was a King's Injured Simish where I offered the gambit and it wasn't accepted. The C5 thing. If D5, I'm happy with that because knight D7 to E5, and it's a pretty knight. I've had that played against me with white. That's partly why I gave up the Samish, because of this C5 system. Actually, I think it's a very interesting practical weapon in over the board chess. Just to play C5 here, but you need to know a few stem games to understand the compensation for it. It's beyond the scope of this video to sort of look at it in detail, but yeah. So just taking on D4 immediately, I've got the advantage here, and yeah, it was quite plain. It was plain sailing after that. So this was the round 3 game, and so I just simplified into a winning like rook and pawn ending. Very simple rook and pawn ending. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.